it started actually with another project. So I was traveling for 2 weeks along the Ho Chi Minh Trail a few years ago, and I made an experimental documentary film with the method of exquisite corpse. So one person telling the story after another. So I travel along the trail, and it was a time when I kind of explore the trail, but also the history of the war and in Vietnam. And there was a lot of things I didn't know, and at the same time I also kind of discovered what is happening now in those locations, the historical kind of locations. So that was some years ago, but somehow the story kind of continued to stick in my mind, and I wanted to travel again and revisit the trail. But this time I wanted to do a photography project. So I wanted to take photographs of those landscapes that kind of associated with the history. But I kind of wanted to erase all kind of things that is too particular. Because in Vietnam, every kind of historical locations, I feel like they are all like really burdened with narratives and propagandas, and I just wanted to make a series of photographs that kind of erase this kind of narratives. So I wanted to somehow just get the landscapes, but not kind of the details of kind of historical narratives. And then just one thing led to another, and then I started to think about, I thought about landscape being a witness to history, and then because I also like work sometimes with found footage, so I thought about how about like doing some research of the kind of existing photography, maybe from the archives or photographs that other people already took, and find the kind of photographs that I look for instead of going and taking the photographs myself. So I started to look, on the website, on the internet and things like that, and look for, I really like the kind of landscapes, photographs, where you see somebody standing in the landscape and just look at the landscape quietly. To me, it's kind of, it's really something that I'm very interested in, because to me, that kind of quiet witness to history it's so kind of symbolic for Vietnam, because the people kind of on the grounds, they would witness history themselves, but they never have a voice to record or to tell what they witnessed. So I look for that kind of photographs. So finally I found a lot of press photographs of people in the landscape, and I was quite surprised. I didn't really realize that is such a kind of tradition of Vietnamese press photographs with people in the landscape, and they are pointing to things. And to the Vietnamese newspapers, they make this kind of photograph as a way of saying that this is the evidence of something. So, for example, you are the photographer or you are the journalist, and you cover a news story, some kind of story, and you need some kind of witness or evidence, and you would tell the person who you talk to point to something, and they would put in the caption something like, Mr. So and so is pointing to something, like for example, if the story is about land dispute between the farmers and corporations, for example, then the farmer or somebody in the story would point to something. In the photograph, you cannot really tell what they are pointing to, but the caption will tell you what they are pointing to. So they would say, Mr. So-and-so is pointing to the land that used to be his family's land, but now it's overtaken by the company or something like that. So I collected maybe about 400 of that kind of photographs, and then from those collection, I chose the ones and edited them into a sequence of a story. So it tells a story. If you follow the story, you would see that it started from something that is very broad, just kind of open space and open landscapes, and then going kind of more and more specific to maybe something closer and closer. It's kind of like a journey, imagination or fiction of somebody traveling, and maybe they're looking for something and these people are pointing to them the directions, or they're looking for treasure or something. So at the end you would see, maybe you can guess what you are looking for. I imagine that this slideshow is kind of a traveler's slideshow. It's like maybe you travel around on the road, traveling in Vietnam to different areas or something, and then you have a slideshow when you come home, and you would show it to your friends or family. So then I thought about the old slideshow projection, and I also kind of wanted to have a sound that creates like a rhythm to kind of immerse the audience into the story, into the fiction. So yeah, so I use the sound of the old slide. I think I have different methods in different works. So sometimes it's more like a film, experimental documentary. So in that way, I would shoot my own footage more. For others, for several films, I use different kind of found footage, and the found footage can come from different sources. So, like one, I use the classic films, like feature films that were made maybe 40 years ago. So now when I re-edit it, I use this material, I re-edit it. It's kind of retell the history, kind of give my own interpretation. If the feature film was about the war, I use that and I remade it, and it changed the perspective. And another one, I use the corporate footage. So the purpose of the shooting was different, and then I remade it. So it's also just like using footage shot with different purposes to kind of appropriate them and reuse them to retell or reinterpret. So in that way, it's this one is also a kind of found footage. But this one is, I think it's quite interesting that I use the images made by the press, made by the media, so remade them into something that is totally different. My career changed all the time, because like first I was trained to be a journalist, and I worked in journalism. When I was trained to be a journalist, I also studied photography. So I really wanted to do photography. And then later I studied international relations, so that is kind of a different kind. And I also studied ethnographic film. So I had kind of many different things in my background. And when I started first with documentary films, I found that documentary films was where I could combine all of these interests and skills that I had over the years. So I started with documentary films, but I also realized that experiment. So I couldn't predict what I would do next. It's just one thing that leads to another. I think I had many terms in my practice. And now I feel like I'm quite free to choose kind of different ingredients or different methods or different formats depending on the project. And I don't think I really just go with one direction. No, not really. No, I don't see anyone else who is doing found footage. And in the center, in Dog Lab, we do more documentary films. They are more personal films, but not similar to this. And now in the center, we try to encourage people to go into different directions, and because the people who came to us, they also came from very different backgrounds, so they also have very different interests, different skills. We try to also combine with visual artists, like we make a workshop that combines performance artists with video artists or filmmakers. So we just kind of try to see what can come out, and I really like the kind of performance-based videos. So that is one direction that I already made some work that's related to that, and want to continue with that direction because I'm very interested in collaborating with performance artists. The turning point was the most obvious one was when I took the ethnographic film course in UC San Diego. That was when I realized that myself, I can manage to do everything to make a film. That was really like a big turning point. But things already happened before that, and like when I studied photography, and I was much more interested in visual communications than writing. But I continued to write as a journalist. But I always practice on the side, photography. But I never knew before that that you can actually do everything to make your own film. Although my mother worked in documentary film before, but long time ago, it was very different. Like when you work to make a film, you have to have like a big crew, and you have so many other people. But when I did this course and just realized that it's great that now you can do everything from developing your idea, researching, shooting, editing, and I love editing. So that was that is when I decided. I would say that media art in Vietnam is still very, very, very young. If you talk about maybe like moving image or film, experimental film, there are more, because for the last 5 to 10 years we started to make independent films and independent documentary films. So I think now kind of the kind of areas that which kind of develop most in the kind of this kind of media art scene is actually more in the film and in the documentaries than from the side of the visual art. In visual art, it's I don't really see much of media art going on. Yeah, the artists are still doing more like mostly performance and installations, but the use of technology or media is very, very little. We can have conversation for, like experimental film, video art, to some extent. But for media art, it's, I don't think there's anything to make a conversation. I think, if we can make some more workshops now with younger artists, then there might be some interest, but we don't really have media art practitioners in Vietnam. I have so much problem with the term media art because like, where do you draw the line? Maybe if you include video art, it's okay. Usually, like I think media art, when we talk about media art, sometimes we kind of include video art, sometimes we don't. So I don't know like when the term apply to. Like the generation before me, like from the late 90s and early 2000s, the visual artists or the painters, sometimes they experiment with like making one piece of video work and then they draw. So nobody kind of continue consistently. Nobody stick with it. Yeah. So and then in Ho Chi Minh City, then we have more because with the overseas Vietnamese like NGUYEN or NGUYEN or the propeller group, they made more works with video art. Yeah. But in the north we don't. Yeah, just a couple of artists experimenting with one or two pieces. But yeah, nobody, because video art is, you cannot sell them. That is one. And the other is technology. Most of the time people don't have equipment. There are not so many. There are so few who experiment with time-based. So we mostly we just have we call visual artists, and then like the people would call me video artist, but there's almost nobody else because from the visual art scene, the artists they would use other formats much more than video art. So they are not video artists. No, I would never call myself media artist because for me the term media art is still kind of related to a lot of technology for me.